Lights dimmed slowly inside Tokyo Dome, and a wave of anticipation swept across the massive crowd. Thousands of fans held their breath, their glowing light sticks flickering like a galaxy waiting to come alive. And then in a single breathtaking moment, everything changed. The music began, the stage ignited with light, and Jimin stepped forward. From that very second, it was clear that this night would not be ordinary. There was something different in the air, something electric, something impossible to explain. Jimin didn't just walk onto the stage, he commanded it. Every movement was precise, every glance intentional, every step filled with a quiet confidence that immediately captured the attention of everyone watching. The cheers were deafening, echoing through the dome like thunder, yet somehow he remained calm in the center of it all, as if he belonged to that very moment more than anyone else. As the performance unfolded, Jimin's voice cut through the noise with stunning clarity. It wasn't just technically perfect, it was emotional, raw, and deeply human. Each note carried a story and fans could feel it. It reached beyond the stage, beyond the screens, beyond the distance, and touched something real inside the hearts of millions. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to slow down, as if the entire world had paused just to listen. Then came the shift, the beat dropped, and without warning, Jimin transformed. His body moved with an intensity that was almost hypnotic. Sharp yet fluid, powerful yet graceful, every motion told its own story. It wasn't just choreography, it was art in its purest form. The crowd erupted, unable to contain their excitement as they watched him take full control of the stage. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only complete mastery. But what made the night truly unforgettable wasn't just the perfection. It was the unexpected. In the middle of the high-energy performance, Jimin suddenly broke into a soft smile. It was small, almost fleeting, but it changed everything. The massive Tokyo Dome no longer felt like a distant arena. It felt intimate, personal, as though he was sharing that moment with each fan individually. That single expression carried warmth, sincerity, and a sense of connection that no performance could ever be rehearsed to achieve. And then, just when the audience thought they had seen it all, Jimin delivered a moment that would soon take over the internet. A high note, flawless, powerful, and breathtaking, rang out across the stadium. It wasn't just impressive, it was unforgettable. Fans screamed, some in disbelief, others in pure admiration. Phones were raised instantly, capturing a moment that would be replayed countless times across the world. Yet amid all the noise and excitement, there was a moment of stillness. Jimin paused. He stood there looking out at the sea of lights, his expression soft yet thoughtful. In that silence, something deeper emerged. It wasn't about performance anymore, it was about connection. No words were needed. The fans understood, and in return they gave him their quiet attention, creating a rare and powerful bond between artist and audience. As the night continued, Jimin's presence only grew stronger. Every step he took seemed to draw more energy from the crowd, and every movement pulled them further into his world. It was impossible to look away. Even among a stage filled with talent and spectacle, he stood out effortlessly. There was a natural magnetism about him, something that couldn't be taught, something that simply existed. Then came another unexpected moment, a spontaneous gesture, small, unscripted, and completely genuine. It lasted only seconds, but its impact was immediate. Fans gasped, their reactions spreading like a wave through the stadium. It was moments like this that reminded everyone why Jimin was so deeply loved. Not just for his talent, but for his authenticity. As the performance built toward its finale, the energy reached its peak. The music grew louder, the lights brighter, and the atmosphere more intense. Jimin gave everything he had, every ounce of energy, every emotion, every piece of himself. His movements were sharper, his voice stronger, his presence more powerful than ever before. It was as if he had saved the very best for last. The final performance exploded with passion. The crowd was no longer just watching, they were part of it. Singing, cheering, feeling every beat as if it were their own heartbeat. And at the center of it all was Jimin, completely in his element, completely unstoppable. And then, just like that, it ended. The music faded. The lights dimmed. For a brief moment there was silence, not because the crowd wasn't impressed, but because they were overwhelmed. What they had just experienced went beyond entertainment. It was something deeper, something that stayed with them even as the night came to a close. Slowly the cheers returned, louder than ever, filling every corner of Tokyo Dome. But even as the sound rose again, there was a lingering feeling that something extraordinary had just happened, something that would not be forgotten. Long after the stage went dark, the world continued to talk about that night. Clips spread rapidly, fans shared their emotions, and the moments lived on far beyond the walls of the stadium. Because what Jimin created that night wasn't just a performance, it was a memory, a feeling, a moment in time that captured the attention of the world and refused to let go. The echoes of that night refused to fade. Even as fans slowly made their way out of Tokyo Dome, there was a shared understanding among them. Something extraordinary had just taken place. Conversations overlapped in excitement, voices filled with disbelief, laughter, and emotion. Some fans clutched their phones, replaying clips they had just recorded, while others simply stood still for a moment longer, trying to hold on to the feeling before reality fully returned. Because what Jimin had created on that stage didn't end when the music stopped. It lingered. Outside the venue, the night air felt different. Groups of fans gathered, their faces still glowing, not just from the lights they held, but from the experience they had just lived. Social media began to explode almost instantly. Videos, photos, and reactions flooded timelines across the globe. Within minutes, Jimin's name was everywhere, trending across countries, languages, and cultures. People who hadn't even attended the concert began to feel it. They saw the clips, the high note that sent chills down spines, the dance break that left viewers breathless, the quiet pause that spoke louder than words. Each moment traveled far beyond Tokyo, reaching millions who could only watch in awe. And yet, even through a screen, something remained undeniable: his presence. There was a reason those moments resonated so deeply. It wasn't just about technical skill or visual performance. It was about authenticity. Jimin wasn't performing at the audience, he was sharing something with them. Every expression, every movement, every note carried intention. Nothing felt empty. Nothing felt forced. That sincerity is what turned a concert into something unforgettable. Backstage, the energy was just as intense, though quieter. The adrenaline was still there, slowly settling after such a powerful performance. For Jimin, moments like these were not just about applause or recognition. They were about connection, growth, and expression. Each stage was an opportunity to give more, to become more, to reach further. And that night he had done exactly that. Fans would later describe the experience in countless ways. Some called it magical, others said it felt surreal. Many admitted they had been moved to tears without fully understanding why. It was more than excitement, it was emotion, raw and unfiltered. There's something rare about an artist who can make thousands of people feel seen at the same time. That's what Jimin did. Hours turned into days, but the impact didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. Media outlets began covering the event, highlighting the most talked about moments. Headlines praised his stage presence, his vocals, his ability to captivate an audience on such a massive scale. Industry professionals analyzed his performance, pointing out the subtle details that made it so effective. The control in his voice, the precision in his movements, the emotional depth behind it all. But for fans it was simpler than that. They felt it. And that was enough. The clips continued to circulate, each one gaining millions of views. Reaction videos appeared, showing people watching Jimin's performance for the first time, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock to admiration. Even those unfamiliar with him found themselves drawn in, unable to ignore the undeniable impact of what they were seeing. It was the kind of moment that breaks barriers. Language didn't matter, culture didn't matter. What mattered was the feeling, and that feeling was universal. As the days passed, one thing became increasingly clear: this wasn't just another successful performance. It was a defining moment. A reminder of what live music could truly be when passion, talent, and authenticity come together in perfect harmony. For Jimin, it was another step in a journey that continues to evolve. For fans, it was a memory they would carry forever. And for the world, it was proof. Proof that sometimes in the middle of a crowded stadium filled with noise and light, one person can create a moment so powerful that it echoes far beyond the stage and stays long after the final note has disappeared. And still, the story of that night refused to settle into memory. It kept moving, spreading, evolving, growing into something even bigger than the moment itself. What happened inside Tokyo Dome had already reached millions, but now it was becoming part of a larger narrative, one that people would revisit again and again. Fans began to notice details they hadn't caught before: a subtle expression during a transition, a controlled breath before a high note, a slight shift in posture that changed the entire energy of a performance. Each rewatch revealed something new, something deeper. It was as if Jimin had layered his performance with intention, small, intricate elements that only became visible over time. And the more people watched, the more they understood just how much thought and emotion had gone into every second on that stage. It wasn't accidental, it was artistry. Behind the powerful vocals and flawless dance, there was discipline. Years of training, countless hours of practice, moments of doubt, moments of growth, all of it came together in a single night. And what made it truly remarkable was how effortless it appeared. The complexity was hidden beneath grace, the effort masked by elegance. That contrast became one of the most talked about aspects of the performance. How could something so technically demanding feel so natural? How could something so powerful feel so gentle at the same time? These questions lingered, not because they needed answers, but because they reflected something rare. Jimin had found a balance that many strive for but few achieve: the ability to be both strong and vulnerable, precise and free, controlled and expressive. As discussions continued, fans from different parts of the world shared their perspectives. Some focused on his vocals, analyzing the stability and tone that defined his sound. Others highlighted his dance, breaking down movements frame by frame, pointing out the fluidity, the control, the storytelling embedded in each step. And then there were those who spoke about something less tangible: his presence, not something that can be measured or taught, but something that can be felt instantly. A quiet magnetism that draws attention without demanding it. A way of existing on stage that makes everything else fade into the background. That presence became the center of the conversation. Because even when surrounded by light, sound, and spectacle, Jimin remained the focal point. Not by overpowering the stage, but by becoming one with it. Every element seemed to respond to him: the music, the visuals, even the audience itself. It created a kind of harmony that is difficult to describe, but impossible to ignore. As time passed, the performance began to take on a new meaning. It was no longer just about the night itself, it became a reference point. Fans compared it to past performances, noting the growth, the evolution, the refinement in his craft. There was a clear progression, a sense that he was constantly pushing himself to go further, to explore new depths of expression, and that's what made the moment so powerful. It wasn't just a peak, it was part of a journey. A journey that continues to unfold with every stage, every performance, every connection made along the way. For many, that night at Tokyo Dome became a reminder of why they fell in love with music in the first place. Not because of perfection, but because of feeling. Because of the way a single voice, a single movement, a single moment can create something lasting, something real. Even those who had never seen Jimin perform before found themselves drawn into that experience. There was a sense of discovery, of witnessing something for the first time that felt both new and familiar at once. It didn't matter when or how they found it, what mattered was that they felt it, and once they did, it stayed. As weeks turned into months, the conversation didn't disappear, it simply changed. It became quieter, more reflective, but no less meaningful. Fans would still revisit the clips, still share their thoughts, still feel that same emotion rising again with each replay. Because some moments don't fade, they settle into memory, not as something distant, but as something alive, something that continues to resonate long after it happens. And that night was one of those moments. A night where everything aligned. A night where one artist stood in the center of it all and gave something unforgettable, not just a performance, but a piece of himself. And in doing so, Jimin didn't just shock the world. He connected with it in a way that words will never fully capture, but hearts will always remember. And even as time continued to move forward, that night refused to be left behind. It lingered not as a distant memory, but as something vivid, something alive in the minds of those who experienced it. The echoes of the music, the glow of the lights, the energy of the crowd, all of it seemed to replay itself in quiet moments, in late-night reflections, in the simple act of pressing play once more. Because some performances fade, but this one stayed. There was a quiet realization that began to settle in among fans and viewers alike. What made that night so powerful wasn't just the scale of the venue or the intensity of the crowd. It wasn't even the flawless execution of each song or movement. It was intention. Every second of Jimin's performance felt purposeful. There was no emptiness, no wasted motion, no disconnected moment. It was as if he had stepped onto that stage with something to say, something beyond words, and chose to express it in the only way he knew how, through movement, through voice, through presence. And perhaps that is why it resonated so deeply. Because people didn't just watch it, they felt it. There's a rare kind of artistry that doesn't rely on explanation. It doesn't need to be broken down or analyzed to be understood. It reaches people instantly, quietly, and leaves an imprint that doesn't easily disappear. That was the kind of artistry Jimin brought to Tokyo Dome. As more time passed, new audiences continued to discover the performance. Some came across a short clip by chance. Others were drawn in by the overwhelming reactions online. And each time the pattern repeated itself, curiosity turning into surprise, surprise turning into admiration, admiration turning into something deeper, respect, because what they were witnessing wasn't just talent, it was dedication made visible. Behind every smooth transition, every stable note, every effortless turn, there were years of unseen effort. Moments of repetition, correction, persistence. Moments where things didn't go perfectly, where growth was necessary, where improvement was earned. And in that one night, all of it came together perfectly, but perfection in this case didn't feel distant or untouchable. It felt human. It felt real. It felt like something that had been built piece by piece, step by step, until it reached that moment on stage. And that made it even more powerful. Fans began to speak not only about what they saw, but what they understood. There was a growing appreciation for the depth behind the performance, for the emotion that wasn't always obvious but always present. A subtle glance, a controlled breath, a gentle pause, these details became just as meaningful as the bigger, more explosive moments, because they revealed something important. They revealed Jimin not just as a performer but as an artist, someone who doesn't simply aim to impress but to express. Someone who doesn't just fill a stage but transforms it into something meaningful, something that carries emotion, intention, and connection all at once. And perhaps that is why the world kept watching, not out of habit, but out of genuine interest, because there was always something more to discover, something more to feel, something more to understand with each viewing. Even now, long after the lights of Tokyo Dome have dimmed, the impact remains. It exists in the way people talk about that night, in the way they describe it not just as a concert but as an experience, something that stood apart from everything else, something that mattered. And in a world filled with constant noise, constant content, constant motion, that kind of moment is rare, a moment that slows everything down, a moment that captures attention without demanding it, a moment that reminds people why they care, why they watch, why they feel. Jimin created that moment. And in doing so, he didn't just leave behind a performance, he left behind a feeling, one that continues to live on, quietly but powerfully in the hearts of those who were there and even those who weren't. Because in the end, the most unforgettable moments aren't the loudest ones, they're the ones that stay.